Welcome. In this video we are going to learn about processing a form in PHP, and the information is submitted from the HTML page, and that goes to the PHP page, which will process and the form and the information submitted in the form. Okay, so the most important thing for that is we need to tell two attributes, one which is called method, and there are two methods we can use. By default the method is get, and the other one is post. Post is considered more secure because when we use get method, the information is sent in the URL, and that's not safe. And the other one is post, where the information is sent in the body of the HTTP protocol. So not going into the details of that. And the other attribute is action, and action attribute tells which form, which PHP page or which page is going to process our information. So I'll call it just process.php for now. Okay, now it's important that when we will want to fix this before we go ahead. In this the code that we already have, we have some alert that when we pass the validation, or when we fail the validation, we give an alert, and when we pass the validation we have another alert, but that's not what is ideal. What we want to do is, when we fail the validation, we don't want to submit the form, and when we pass the validation we want to submit the form. So this is what we are going to do. We are going to add a block here and say that when we actually fail the validation, which means there is nothing, name field is empty, then we return false. What return false does is, this function will return false, which means this function, which is actually executed when the submit button is clicked, and when the function returns false, that means don't do the default action for that button, which means don't submit the form. And if we return true, that means go ahead, do whatever we have to do. So we don't want to give this alert. Same thing we will do here. We will remove the alert, and we will add a block here and say return false. So that means when the name field is empty, we will get an alert, and then form will not be submitted, and then we don't have to check other things because this method will exit anyways. Let's say if the name field is okay, then it goes and checks the email field. If the email field is not okay, then we get another alert, we get an alert, and we don't submit the form. If we come here, that means that both the validations passed, so we return true, which means go ahead and submit the form. Okay, so that's the default behavior, and I can show you how that works, but that's not really required. What I'm going to do next is quickly add a new file, and I'll call it process.php. So I have process.php. I'm going to overwrite it. Okay, so I'll just write basic PHP code, and within this PHP it's important now to note how does the HTML communicates with the PHP. So we have seen in the form there are each input element, labels are not submitted, only input elements are submitted, and some other things like text area and radio button and so on. So when this input is submitted, the ID field is used by the JavaScript. We may not even have a JavaScript, but let's say the ID field is used by the client to identify what kind of input, which element we are talking about. For the information to be processed by the PHP, there is another field that we need, that is the name field. And whatever we put here in the name attribute, this name attribute will be used to identify the text, the information or the text that is put in this particular input box. So I'm going to call this name field, just to keep it separate from the ID and type. So name field is for the name attribute, And the same thing we will add for the email, name equals, and we will call it email field. So we have added two attributes here. For each input box we need a name, a name attribute and a value for that, and this is going to be identified in process. So when the data comes here in the PHP file, there is an associative array. So you know from PHP that there is associative arrays where the index is actually a string, and in this case the associative array, because the data is submitted using post, the data comes in the post associative array. If the method in the form is get here, method equals get or by default, then the data comes in the get associative array. So I'm going to just comment this out so that you know that this exists, but we are not using get, we are using post. And the value, the index or the key that is used in the post associative array is the name field that was given. So we said name field, so F is capital here, so we will say name field. Now underscore post name field, this is going to return the value that was in the text box. So let's store it, because it's PHP, the variable name will start with dollar, so we'll say dollar name equals and a semicolon. Same thing, the variable name could be anything, it doesn't have to be name. I'll just call it name var. Okay, again post and then email field. So that's the important thing, is that the name attribute is what is used in the PHP to identify which value we are talking about. In JavaScript or jQuery, or most probably for even for CSS and all that stuff, we use the ID field, because ID is used by the HTML to identify that particular element in the JavaScript or in the document object model for that matter. So now that we have this information in PHP variables, we can echo them, and I'll just say name thank you and since let's make it a little funny. Okay, so now this is as you know, this is a string. We don't need concatenation here. This dollar name, the variables will be expanded or parsed by the PHP, and name var will be substituted by the actual value, and same thing here, and that will be the echo for the page. So this is how we can use these values for something. Later on we will see how we can use these values in SQL, so we can enter that information and store it into a database. But for now we'll just echoing that information back, telling that we got the information and we are good to go. Okay, so now of course we have to process this PHP file. We cannot test it in a local browser, so we have to upload it, and I'm going to transfer both the files to the server. It will take some time because it's going to establish a connection, and it's finished. So now I have to go to my web page, and on the web page we have test, and we have the basic form.html. Okay, so now this basic form, first let's see our validations. And if I submit the information, it says name field is empty and the information is not submitted to the form, because you will see if the information is submitted, it behaves differently. So let's add some information, my name, or let's put the actual name, none done. Email addresses, just let's check again. Email field is empty, so we are asked to put an email field. Let's put a invalid email, because the type is email. You can see that the HTML5 is doing the work, and the browsers are checking if we have the actual proper email address. And I'm not going to give my actual email address for spamming, so I'm going to just put test.com and submit, and you can see that now this page goes to the PHP, and looks like we have an error there on line 5. So let's fix it. Okay, sorry, it should be $_post, because all the PHP variables start with dollar. So it's not underscore post, it should be $_post, and I'll have to transfer this file again. And now if I go back and submit now, so you can see it says thank you Nandan. So it substituted the name here and the email address here, and the message is thank you for giving us your email address for spamming. So of course we have to be careful when we enter our email addresses on any web page, because that could be used or misused in many ways. But you get the idea. The PHP form is getting the information through the HTML form. We also have the jQuery validation. It's actually a mix of jQuery and JavaScript both. It's not pure jQuery. There is JavaScript mixed in that. But JavaScript is very easy. It has most of the syntax is very similar to the Java or C++, except this var, which is used to declare a variable. So this means we are declaring a variable. They don't have types, and then we have the value that we want to assign. Okay, so we'll pause here, and then we will later on see how we can actually get the data in PHP and then submit it and store it in a SQL database or MySQL database and process that. Okay, thank you.